I started writing when I was in elementary school, but I started writing poetry about 2004. Um, and I really didn't make a distinction between poetry and hip hop in the beginning. I didn't understand verse and meter and any of that in the beginning. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was the rise of Lil Wayne and that whole style of freeform rapping that we weren't saying anything. And I just figured that, people didn't want to hear what I had to say anymore in that vein. And so I was like, the game is past me, and I needed to find some other avenue to express myself. And luckily, I ran into Cherokee and then ran into Dasha, and the whole mega thing happened. For me, it really happened super organic. I didn't put a lot of thought into that transfer. When I did one of my raps in front of the poets, they really appreciated my wordplay. And just like with the rap thing, once I decided that I was going to be a poet, I wanted to take it serious. And so I went about learning who was the best and how do they do it and asking questions and wanting people to edit my work and all that stuff. That became important to me. I don't know if I think I made a decision and to be a poet, and then I started to change the way I express myself. But the expression never really changed. I think that with hip hop, it's more about the bass, lower parts of myself. Not saying that's true for every hip hop artist, but for me, it was more about the bass, lower parts of myself, and I started to think more from the higher self. Started being more Claire Brown and my grandmother, the altruism and that caring and being able to express those feelings of empathy for other people that started to make me more poet than hip hop artist. When I first started doing poetry, this girl named Cherokee in Dayton, Ohio, and she had a open mic set, and I was rapping, and I was about to quit rapping, and just move on with my life, and she had invited me to come out and read one of my raps at her open mic set, and I did, and everybody really enjoyed it. And then the next week I came back. This is in Dayton, Ohio, and then the next week I came back. They had a feature, and it just happened to be Dasha, and I heard her perform, and I performed some of my work. And then after my divorce, when I moved back to Milwaukee, I ended up searching her out, and she had a set at the Mecca, and I ended up going there and getting to know her and learning about writing from then on. So she had always been around in the formative years of my poetic thing, by just happenstance, or just something that happened kind of organically, and she just happened to be in Dayton, and found her in Milwaukee, and we kind of went from there. So when I first was introduced to the Mecca, it was on 34th and Silver Spring, I can't remember, somewhere in that area, and it was less of a proving ground as it was a nurturing space for a lot of writers, and it was a really welcoming environment. At the time, it was like all of these different people from different various backgrounds and skill levels and sets, and it just seemed to be an environment that fostered creativity, and everybody who came in contact with that space seemed to be more focused on the words than they were on the social, cultural stuff. At the time, it was a lot more about just what you were writing than who you were or being a personality. And I think for a lot of the people on the scene, or a lot of the people who dominate the scene now, they were still in their infancy, and so they were a lot more welcoming, and wasn't a whole bunch of big egos yet, and had nobody really got super popular. And so it was just a place that was really welcoming and inviting, and a space to learn and grow. And most of the people that I became friends with from that era are still my friends now. So I've learned that there's a lot of good people in this world whose intentions are to make the world a better place. I've also heard that egos can be a horrible thing, and that people can be completely self-absorbed and disingenuous in what they say they want from what they actually want. I've learned to be more giving and caring and appreciative from poets. I've learned to be altruistic. from poets, but I've also learned that poets can be selfish and self-centered and egotistical like anybody else. I used to think that because somebody was expressing all these grandiose emotions on stage, that they must be the sweetest, kindest person in the world. And some of it's just performance, and some of it's just a show. But I've also learned that sometimes people really are who they say they are, and I just learned to be careful about that. But I think you'll learn that anywhere. What Milwaukee has taught me most specifically is that creativity can be a beautiful thing, and that the coming together of people can be a beautiful thing. And when it works really, really well. And I think Milwaukee has fostered a fraternity of poets that, from various backgrounds and age ranges and groups of people that try to keep that creative spirit alive. Poetry is an ancient art, older than music, really, and I think that it's alive in Milwaukee, and I think that it's growing in Milwaukee, and in some ways great, in some ways bad. But I've learned that you got to kind of get out the way of it and let it be what it's going to be, and whether you participate in everything or you don't is immaterial, but you give your energy where you can and try to make things better. And that, one person's will can really impact a community. So whether that person's myself, or Qua, or Dasha, or Darla Nikki Jansen, or Spitfire, or Bobby Drake, or, people I've already mentioned, a whole bunch of other poets, Dia Green, and, Christina Logic, or a million other poets whose will of personality has continued the art and has continued us growing and moving. Britt Nicole comes to mind, Tiffany Miller, like a few other poets who have really dedicated themselves to keeping the art alive. And that focus of will and inspiration can move people in ways that you never would have expected. I mean, poetry can be life-changing when you let it, and Milwaukee taught me that.